the Faculty of Economics and Business, University of Indonesia, FEBUI. It's a modern, dynamic, and welcoming campus, a place to study for the nation's future leaders. Situated in two strategic locations, Depok and Salemba, we are fully committed to contribute to the development of knowledge in economics and business, and to nurture future leaders with a sense of social responsibility and the ability to address global environmental changes. For over 65 years, we have produced the country's best graduates that will potentially play important roles both in the Indonesian government and the private sector.
So my name is Thijs Hesselmans, I'm from Blanda. And one of the many things I like about Facultas Economie and Business Universitas Indonesia is that the campus is really green. It's wonderful.
In the future, we are aiming to become Asia's leading economics and business learning center, which contributes to the development of Indonesia and the global community. FEBUI has three departments: the Department of Economics, the Department of Management, and the
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning for the colleagues who are in the United Kingdom. Honorable keynote speaker, Professor Bambang Brodjonegoro, PhD, the Minister of Research and Technology, National Research and Innovation Agency of the Republic of Indonesia. Honorable Professor Arief Kuncoro, PhD, Rektor of Universitas Indonesia. Honorable Professor Sabina Alkire with the University of Oxford, England, the keynote panelist. Honorable Professor Anhariza Antariksawan, Head of National Nuclear Energy and Agency of Indonesia. Honorable Professor Dr. Thomas Jamaluddin, Head of National Institutes of Aeronautics and Space of Indonesia. Honorable panelists, Dr. Putu Natih from the University of Oxford, Dr. Teguh Dartanto from Faculty of Economics and Business Universitas Indonesia, Professor Arief Anshori Yusuf from Universitas Pajajaran, Dr. Masita Manessa from Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science Universitas Indonesia, Dr. Rimawan Pradiptyo from Faculty of Economics and Business Universitas Indonesia. Honorable directors from the Ministry of Research and Technology, Republic of Indonesia. Welcome to the webinar Matchmaking Research Collaborations, Multidimensional Poverty and Environmental Sustainability in Indonesia in the Recovery Process of COVID-19. The webinar aims to cementing research collaborations on poverty, welfare, and the environment between Indonesia and the United Kingdom. The webinar would be moderated by Bapak Ahmad Gamal, PhD. Allow me to introduce him. Bapak Ahmad Gamal received his PhD in Regional Planning and Master of Urban Planning, both from the University of Illinois and Urbana-Champaign, his Master of Art in Communication Management from the London School of Public Relations, and his Bachelor of Architecture from Universitas Indonesia. His research interests concerns economic impact evaluations and physical development, the relationship between urban development and poverty alleviation, and the use of the technology for regional growth, monitoring, and control. His expertise has been nationally recognized through his policy-driven work at the Directorate of Poverty Alleviation, Indonesian Ministry and Development Planning, Bappenas. Dr. Gamal currently serves as an assistant professor at the Master Program of Urban and Regional Planning, Department of Architecture, College of Engineering, Universitas Indonesia. He also served as the advisor for the Smart City Center and Director of Innovation and Science Technopark at Universitas Indonesia. Bapak Ahmad Gamal, this session is yours as the moderator.
Thank you, Ibu Bini. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon for you attending this event from Indonesia, and very good morning for those attending from the United Kingdom. Welcome to our web seminar titled Multidimensional Poverty and Environmental Sustainability in Indonesia in the Recovery Phase from COVID-19. This event is conducted through the extensive collaboration between Universitas Indonesia, Oxford University, and the Indonesian Ministry of Research and Technology. Among our speakers, we also have representatives from UI and Oxford, as well as speakers from Universitas Gadjah Mada and Universitas Pajajaran. This event will hopefully cement research collaboration on poverty, welfare, and the environment between Indonesia and the UK. It will also contribute to the strengthening of collaborative networks between Indonesian and UK universities, which has been formalized through the establishment of UK-Indonesia Consortium for Interdisciplinary efforts among 6 Indonesian and UK universities, supported generously by the Indonesian Ministry of Research and Technology and the UK Minister of State for Asia. I'd like to announce that today we are honored by the presence of His Excellency, Minister of Research and Technology, Professor Bambang Brodjonegoro. To officially commence this web seminar, I would respectfully request our Honorable Rector of Universitas Indonesia, Professor Arief Kuncoro, to give his opening address. Professor Arief Kuncoro, time is yours. Prof. Arief, kami mohon dengan hormat.
Professor Bambang Brodjonegoro, Minister of Research and Technology of the Republic of Indonesia. Your Excellency, Professor Ismunandar, Vice Minister of Research and Technology of the Republic of Indonesia. Your Excellency, Professor Sabina Alkire, the Director of the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, Department of International Development, University of Oxford. Senior Research College from University of Indonesia, University of Oxford, and the Pajajaran University, SDG Center, and Gajah Mada University. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Good afternoon to all distinguished speakers and participants here in Indonesia, and to Professor Sabina Alkire in Bhutan. Good morning to colleagues and friends in Oxford. I hope we are all blessed with health, optimism, and hope as we start today's webinar discussion. I'm honored to welcome you all on this auspicious event and to open our discussion on the multidimensional poverty and sustainable recovery from COVID-19 in Indonesia. The aim of this webinar is to bring together experts and scientists from Indonesia and the United Kingdom to work together in order to discover innovative solutions to the challenges Indonesia is facing in the midst of COVID-19. This webinar came to fruition through the hard work and collaboration between colleagues within the Indonesian Ministry of Research and Technology, the University of Indonesia, Oxford University, Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, colleagues within the Pajajaran University and Gajah Mada University. Even though we can now only meet virtually, I'm deeply impressed by the strength of the collaboration and cooperation between our distinguished institutions. I hope this webinar and discussion will further cement and catalyze this spirit of working together, or as we say in Indonesia, the spirit of gotong royong between researchers in Indonesia and the UK to support the development of green and sustainable roadmap to recovery for Indonesia. Distinguished colleagues and participants, COVID-19 has deprived all aspects of society. It has contributed to the volatility and disruption of the Indonesian economy, leading to significant decreases in economic growth, particularly when the pandemic first hit our nation. Around 2.67 million workers have lost their livelihood and have become unemployed. Preliminary poverty rate forecast suggests an increase in the poverty rate to up to 12.37% in Indonesia. As the pandemic unfolds, more people are falling into the clutches of poverty and more have become vulnerable, and the danger of entrenched inequality become further apparent for Indonesia. Urgent action need to be taken to support government efforts in mitigating these significant challenges, as the pandemic has and continue to affect all aspects of life. Monitoring poverty and welfare as multifaceted phenomenon, following that defined within first goal of the Sustainable Development Goal of the eradicating poverty in all its forms has become crucial need for Indonesia. Because of this, innovative solutions are needed to shed light on the way multiple deprivation experienced by the poor and vulnerable Indonesia are monitored. This becomes even more important as these multiple deprivation are likely to have become deeper and more intense due to the COVID-19. Mapping deprivation in health and educational attainment, nutrition, and food security, among others, alongside analyzing the possible impact of the pandemic on environmental sustainability and climate change, is a formidable challenge, a challenge that can only be overcome through collaboration. This research collaboration project within Indonesia and UK seeks to address the detrimental effect of the pandemic faced by Indonesian people. With the support of the Ministry of Research and Technology, together we aim to develop innovative solutions coupling expertise from Indonesia, researcher and Oxford University College for sustainable and green recovery for Indonesia. Our consortium of researchers and scientists aim to promote knowledge and sharing and cooperation from many areas of expertise: economics, public policy, engineering, technology, natural sciences, and spatial mapping, among others. We hope that with the support of the Ministry of Research, we may be able to help Indonesia build back better and emerge strong from this pandemic. Let us work together through the strong collaboration to leave no one behind in Indonesia recovery process from COVID-19. May peace be with us all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Arief, for your opening address. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored that His Excellency Minister of Research and Technology, Professor Bambang Brodjonegoro, is here with us to give his keynote speech. Allow me to read few details of His Excellency CV. Graduated from UI in 1990. He continued his master and doctoral education at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and completed them in 1997. Subsequently, he had been appointed as the Dean of the Faculty of Economics at UI, the Director General of Islamic Research and Training Institute at the Islamic Development Bank Group, the head of the Fiscal Policy Agency at the Indonesian Ministry of Finance, Vice Minister, and subsequently Minister of Finance, and last but not least, Minister of Development Planning. Professor Bambang has been our Minister of Research and Technology / head of the National Research and Innovation Agency since October 2019. Professor Bambang, time is yours.
Thank you, Mas Gamal. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, very good afternoon to all Indonesian colleagues, and very good morning for colleagues and participants from UK or overseas. Honorable Rektor of University of Indonesia, Prof. Arief Kuncoro, and also Professor Sabina from Oxford University, and all speakers, Dr. Putu, Dr. Teguh Dartanto, Professor Arief Anshori, Dr. Masita, and Dr. Rimawan, and distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. To follow up the opening remarks by Prof. Arief Kuncoro, I would like to emphasize the needs of Indonesia to change the paradigm from resource-driven economy to innovation-driven economy. If I can share the screen to make it easier. Yeah. So the question is why we need this kind of paradigm shift. It's simply because we have dealt with these natural resources for so long. In fact, somehow Indonesia cannot, get rid of our dependence to natural resources, while at the same time we have the ambition in 2045 to be part of the developed economy or high-income country. So in order to do that, we need a breakthrough. We cannot do just business as usual. Especially now with the pandemic, we have disruption. Last year, we had contraction, economic growth -2%. So if we can go to page 4, please. Yeah. Then the needs to change the paradigm from halaman 4 to change the paradigm from resource-driven to innovation-driven is possible breakthrough that has to be done. We can follow, of course, the example from Korea, Japan, and lately China. All of them have been able to get rid of middle-income trap and becoming part of developed economy and high-income country. But when we are talking about innovation, it's not just for economic growth. Innovation, on the other end, is also a very good instrument to reduce the poverty and also to reduce inequality. Sometimes we don't realize innovation and technology can have bigger impact on those areas than the growth itself. So in this case, in Indonesia, when we are moving toward innovation-driven economy, the innovation has to be relevant, with the latest and current technology, which is Industrial Revolution 4.0 and digital technology. Plus the pandemic, then our innovation, our research activities should be directed to make less contact economy working for everyone. And why I'm trying to define less contact economy? Because of the pandemic, we cannot do the normal thing, which is the hyperconnectivity among human beings. We have to replace this hyperconnectivity among human beings by the ICT. So by ICT meaning we have to speed up the digital transformation. On the page, let's move to the page 6. Our ministry trying to make the transition from resource-driven to innovation-driven in stages and hopefully in the smooth way. So one of effort that we have done, for example, we are trying to formulate the national research priorities. Of course, research can be done for everything, but in order to speed up, our transition into innovation-based economy, then we can focus on innovation that is trying to increase the value added of our natural resources, and at the same time, we trying to promote innovation that will provide import substitution. And as a result, we can get some good programs. For example, trying to create the green fuel, because the topic of today's seminar is about green economy. So green fuel can be derived from, for example, palm oil rather than other type of plantation to substitute for fossil fuel. And of course, we also working on other type of renewable energy. But this green fuel could be one of the technology that already innovated by professors in Bandung Institute of Technology. And aside from the technology, aside from the growth, our idea that innovation should also help reducing poverty, reducing inequality. That's why we have the program, for example, Desa Berinovasi, or innovation for villages, and also innovation for small and medium enterprise. In the innovation for small and medium enterprise, basically, our program is trying to help SMEs first to be part of the digital network, meaning that they can market, they can promote the product through market platform or through marketplace, and also through social media, for example. Or the other way is we also support small and medium enterprise to improve their production technology, making their production technology more efficient and also creating some kind of quality, higher quality of their production. So technology intervention is needed for small and medium enterprise as well as for villages, because majority in our village in Indonesia relies on agriculture sector. And now we can promote more innovation on agriculture that we usually call agriculture 4.0 or smart agriculture. Of course, we need infrastructure to support these villages for innovation. From out of 74,000 villages in Indonesia, 12,000 of them do not have yet the internet or good internet connection. The last mile connection is not there in those 12,000 villages, meaning that aside from building the infrastructure for ICT for those 12,000 villages, we also need to introduce the use of the latest technology in order to make their agricultural activities more productive, aside, of course, for other activities like fishery, light manufacturing, and also some basic economic activities. Aside from that, we also promote the startup. And startup has to be defined as technological-based entrepreneurs. And Indonesia needs many more of them. Startup in not only digital technology, but startup in different type of technology. And we hope this will be the, the entrepreneurs, Indonesian entrepreneurs for the future. Currently, when we are talking about the so-called conglomerates in Indonesia, they are focusing on mining, they're focusing on plantation, and they are focusing, for example, in cigarette. So this is the time for us to create or to generate the new class of entrepreneurs that is technological based. And that happened in many other countries in the world. I mean, if you look at the the ranking of the richest person in the world, they are all in technology, no longer in mining, no longer in agriculture or consumer products. So, going on to page 8, the next page, please. I really support the idea of webinar this afternoon because we would like to have more and more network between universities, research institution in Indonesia with universities and research institution overseas. And of course, from long period of time, we already had some kind of bilateral relationship between government and government. For example, between government of Indonesia and government of UK, we already have Newton Fund that has given a lot of research fund for many proposals. But of course, we would like to do more than that. And the solution is going through direct collaboration between universities in Indonesia and universities in UK. That's why with my counterpart, Minister of Science and Technology in UK, we already signed agreement and we already launched the program called UKICIS, UKICIS. And basically, this trying to create the stronger network between universities in Indonesia and universities in UK. So far, in this UKICIS, it has been launched, I think, a couple months ago. The members still limited at the beginning at 3 universities in Indonesia, Gajah Mada University, Bogor Agriculture University, and Bandung Institute of Technology with their respective counterpart. I think Coventry, Nottingham, yeah, as well as Warwick. And I really welcome the possible 4th type of partnership between the group of universities in Indonesia and Oxford University. Of course, we know the reputation of Oxford, and we really like to learn from Oxford how to increase the research capacity, how to increase the research quality, and increase also the publication, of course, in respective journal, how to create the prototype that will be later downstream into an innovation product, and of course, supported by a strong intellectual property rights. So I hope this matchmaking process this afternoon could be a good start for a stronger connection between universities in Indonesia. I think we can go to the next page. The universities involved are University of Indonesia, Gajah Mada University, and Pajajaran University. And the topic that will be covered by this collaboration with Oxford would be about the multidimensional poverty and environmental sustainability. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, the multidimensional poverty is not just an issue of social and economics. Even now, innovation and technology already have, I think, more important role in trying to reduce the poverty and reducing inequality. I think the existence, for example, of cashless payment system already helps. And also the mobile banking already helps the financial inclusion. So more and more Indonesians now have access to bank account. And that would be a good start. Then government can just simply transfer the amount of money, either subsidy or social support to the poor household through this banking system. And I think this is the very important role of technology. On the issue of the environmental sustainability, if I can, for example, ask for special attention, we would like to focus on the issue of circular economy. I think in Indonesia, at one point, we somehow neglect the issue of waste while we produce a lot of waste. On the other hand, we are still struggling with renewable energy because we are still fighting and still conflicting between the fossil fuel and renewable. So combining this with circular economy, I think will be good. And I also learned a lot of practices in circular economy that has to be based on the research activities, because from waste you can produce not only energy, but you can also produce fertilizer, for example. So these are the types of research which is very practical and I think very useful, especially for people in Indonesia. So this is one area of the environmental sustainability that I believe will fulfill the ideas of Sustainable Development Goals, which is the harmony between economy, ecology, and social issues. So I hope this webinar can produce a strong foundation for for multi-years research collaboration. And as I mentioned earlier, we already developed this type of collaboration between a group of universities in Indonesia with MIT, the group of universities in Indonesia with Melbourne University, and also this UKSIS. And yesterday, I just had a video conference to start the collaboration, the network or the collaboration between Gadjah Mada University as a leader of Indonesian consortium with Northwestern University, Illinois in the US. So we have now many partners, and of course, we really like Oxford to be our partners, to be our teacher in directing us to have higher quality of research and also higher quality of innovation. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Bambang, thank you so much for your keynote address. It's very insightful. It addresses so many things that are very important in our modern economy. We have been informed that your time is very limited because of prior commitments, but before you leave, can we have the pleasure of taking pictures with you? Bapak Ibu sekalian, mungkin boleh menyalakan kameranya agar kita bisa berfoto bersama dengan Pak Menteri. Silakan, mungkin bisa dibantu teman-teman teknisi agar bisa melakukan screenshot ya dengan Pak Menteri. Kalau boleh diberi instruksi saja begitu agar bisa di screenshot, silakan. Pak Ibnu ya barangkali yang bisa membantu.
Baik, ada 12 slide yang mulai.
Mohon maaf, mohon bersabar ya Pak Menteri, karena ada 300 partisipan, ada 12 slide dari Zoom page-nya. Terima kasih untuk kesabaran menunggunya Pak Menteri dan Pak Rektor. Mohon diberi informasi, Pak Ibnu sudah di screen keberapa?
Di scene ke-7.
Kami ucapkan juga selamat datang kepada Bapak Ibu Eselon 1 dari Batan, dari 8, dan dari Kementerian Ristek dan Teknologi.
Sudah selesai Pak Gamal, terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak Ibnu. Thank you very much His Excellency Minister, Pak Rektor, Profesor Ari. Kami mengerti bahwa Pak Ristek kebetulan ada janji dengan Menteri BUMN. Terima kasih banyak atas kehadiran Bapak. Mudah-mudahan Bapak bisa berkenan hadir dalam acara Universitas Indonesia yang lain. Sekali lagi kami sampaikan terima kasih atas nama panitia. Terima kasih Pak Menteri. Pak Rektor.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Thank you very much. So we are moving on to our keynote panel today. Professor Sabina Alkire, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, and if I don't, don't hesitate to correct me. Professor Sabina Alkire is the director of the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative, an economic research center within the Oxford Department of International Development, established in 2007. She is a fellow of the Human Development and Capability Association. She has worked with organizations such as the Commission on the Measurement of Economic Performance and Social Progress, the United Nations Human Development Program, Human Development Report Office, the European Commission, and the UK's Department for International Development. Professor Alkire and fellow OPHI member economist Professor James Foster has developed the Alkire-Foster method, a method of measuring multidimensional poverty. It includes identifying who is poor by considering the range of deprivations they suffer and aggregating that information to reflect societal poverty. My apologies. Sabina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I was so grateful for the speeches by Professor Ari, Kuncoro, and Professor Bambang, Brodjonegoro. And I also must say that there is an additional connection in that I did my undergraduate at University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, where my father worked. So there are many good connections, but really I am grateful to be with the distinguished delegates, with the people from many universities across Indonesia, and with students to begin this exciting exchange. I'm sure that I will learn a very great deal from it. So what I would like to do briefly is to share a few thoughts about just the basics of multidimensional poverty. And I know that colleagues on this panel will go far beyond that in their remarks. And I think that what we recognize even more starkly after the COVID pandemic is that poverty has many dimensions, because there are many things that batter poor people's lives at the same time, as Amartya Sen said. And it could be you've lost your job from COVID. It could be the health risk. It could be a comorbidity and not being able to get health care. It could be housing conditions, nutrition, children, and childcare considerations. And so a multidimensional poverty approach tries to look at, in a very strict sense, a set of core deprivations that strike the same person at the same time, that are interlinked at the level of the person or the household. And so what I'd like to do is explain a little bit more about why this might be of interest, but what I am most excited about is how we will take it much further than we have gone so far. So, as you will know, there has been a recognition now globally that the traditional monetary poverty measures, which are very valid and necessary, are not complete, and so need to be complemented with a sister measure, which looks at poverty in non-monetary aspects. And this is recognized in the first of the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is ending poverty in all its forms and dimensions. Another touch point of the SDGs is that it wants to look at interlinkages between different Sustainable Development Goals, different things like environment and poverty. And what better way to do this than to look at each human being or each household and see from their perspective what is going on, what deprivations are striking them. And also, it's more cost effective when we have multi-sectoral and integrated policies. And that's very important given, as Professor Kuncoro mentioned, the economic shock of the pandemic. So the multidimensional poverty measure is an SDG indicator. And it is also a way to illuminate interlinkages between some of the related aspects of sustainable development goals. And it's also a tool for designing very high impact policies. So just to give you a moment of background, there are 169 targets of the SDGs. The first one is to end $1.90 of poverty. And the second is to focus on multidimensional poverty and cutting it by at least half. This has had quite a lot of take up. So 48 countries, for example, have talked about multidimensional poverty in their voluntary national reviews. Many countries have reported official national MPIs in their SDG indicators. And there's a recognition that one of the value added of the MPI is that it's both an SDG indicator, but it also draws together under one roof a number of other SDG indicators. And so when you reduce MPI, you have a double benefit of reducing other aspects of important faces of poverty at the same time. So what is the measure of multidimensional poverty? You have a list of indicators, and it might be the 10, it might be 12, it might be others, tailored to the context of Indonesia. And for each person or household, you build a profile, asking what are their deprivations across each of these indicators. And if they are deprived in a critical mass, reflected in a poverty cutoff, they are identified as poor. So just like you identify every person in the society as monetary poor or not, you do so with multidimensional poverty. And then you can speak to journalists about the familiar headcount ratio, the percentage of people who are MPI poor. But very importantly, you can also speak about the intensity of their poverty. How many indicators, what's the weighted score of deprivations they experience at the same time? And you can use this at the national level, by subnational levels, or indicators. So I'd give an example, and the example is Indonesia using the global multidimensional poverty, which we compute for 5.9 billion people and 107 countries in 2020. And this looked at Indonesia over a 5-year period, 2012 to 2017. And it's a too acute measure for Indonesia. I'm sure with colleagues, you will do a much better measure. But simply using this very basic tool, we found that Indonesia reduced each of the 10 indicators significantly. Few countries did so. It reduced the incidence of poverty strongly. It almost cut the MPI by half, not in the 15-year period of the SDGs, but in 5 years. And 17 of the 33 subnational regions did cut their MPI by 1/2 in 5 years. 88 million people left poverty. And furthermore, the poorest regions reduced MPI the fastest. So at the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the bubbles. The size of the bubbles is the number of poor people in 2012. And Papua was the poorest by far in the original period. And it had the fastest reduction of poverty. East Nusa Tenggara, West Sulawesi, Central Sulawesi, these regions had very fast reductions, so they're not being left behind, they're catching up. So that's an illustration of a multidimensional poverty measure, very fast, something that could be improved greatly by our collaboration. But besides having a stronger measure, the important thing after the pandemic is to use that measure to create more powerful policies with limited fiscal resources. And many countries are already using the MPI to allocate their budget so that it reflects the number and the composition of poverty by sector, to target the poorest groups or the poorest regions, for example, using the registry data on 40% of the population, to design multi-sectoral policies by looking at each region and how their composition of poverty is, so that you don't lose money fighting a deprivation that's not experienced by the poor in that region. To monitor and evaluate so you can see changes within relatively short periods. As we saw, Colombia updates their MPI every year, Vietnam 4 times a year, Mexico and Chile every 2 years. So countries have a rhythm of updating their MPI and using it to monitor change. And then to coordinate across different sectors of government so that they have a common goal, ending multidimensional poverty. And it's a team sport, so you have to work together to make it happen. In addition, during the pandemic, the MPI has been used a lot. And so we have learned from our country partners how to merge it with environment data, with institutional data, with health records data, with COVID data, all with the appropriate ethical protections. And now going into the COVID recovery, it is vital to, again, have very targeted, thoughtful responses. And our hope is that an appropriately designed and adapted indicator for the context of the goals through 2045 would be a tool in this direction. A number of countries are using MPIs, as I mentioned. For example, we had a side event at the UN General Assembly 2020, which included Minister of Bapanas from Indonesia, about how they could use the MPI as a tool of leadership during the pandemic. And it included, for example, the president of Afghanistan and of Costa Rica, the prime minister of Pakistan and of Nepal, and other high-level speakers sharing their commitment and their solidarity. Also, we learn from each other in a very, very equal way. So, for example, Colombia's statistical office had a recent census. I know Indonesia has a census from September, and they built their MPI from the census. And then with particular ethical protocols, they were able to build maps and to track the contagion and also to track the COVID response. And so because we are around a census period, that can be a powerful tool. Professor Kuncoro also mentioned the triple helix motivation of this research collaboration, which is to involve government and researchers, but also industry. And I simply wanted to mention that it is not only governments that are using the MPI, but also businesses. We've spun out the first social enterprise of our university because businesses wanted to do the survey on their own employee base, have a campaign, and support their employees to find out which of their own employees were poor by the national definition of poverty. And to their surprise, sometimes it's not the cleaners, it can be up to middle managers. And then to work with them, again, with respect, dignity, ethical protocols, to support their own employees to leave poverty. That reaches a national objective. It creates solidarity, both by those who give and by those who exit poverty. And it helps with the reputation of the company in terms of attracting and retaining its own workers. So I will end only by saying that this is the start of a collaboration, not the end. And my mind is buzzing with questions on which you are the experts. And I hope that we look at them together. For example, what would be an appropriate profile of multidimensional poverty in Indonesia after the pandemic? And also, how can we learn from the past, from analyzing previous data sets, whether it is Susunas or Demographic and Health Survey or other data sets? What were the determinants of poverty? What are the policy lessons that we can learn from what has worked in the past? And then if there is interest in an official permanent MPI as a statistic of poverty, how would it add value in that context? And we have to do that self-critically. But then also using whatever measures, we could identify who are the poorest after the pandemic and how are they, the new poor, faring? What are the kinds of supports and how effectively are they reducing poverty? And again, returning to the questions of budgeting, there are many research questions about how actually to go from an MPI to a budget, unit costs, budget and incidence curves. How do you target? What survey data? How do you design it? How do you coordinate? But I think one of the most exciting aspects of our partnership will be to overlay MPI data with environmental threats, with information technology, to explore deep learning and non-traditional data sources, to cross it with monetary poverty and see who's MPI poor and monetary poor and who's not, and to look at comorbidities if the pandemic continues. I'd only like to close by saying that in our work and in our research, we have found that we can learn as much from students as from professors with great respect. And there have been some students who have done amazing work. And this is a field in which it is relatively new. And so publications can be highly cited, and there's space for new voices, for new ideas, for real breakthroughs to happen. So my hope and my emphasis and my gratitude for this collaboration is that together we will be able to make intellectual breakthroughs with appropriate intellectual property rights, with all of the respect of collaboration, but that these breakthroughs would also, most importantly, be useful to address the suffering and the poverty in this post-pandemic period. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Alkire. That's such an insightful presentation from you. If I can just provide a very brief summary of what we heard. We learned that Indonesia has a hidden success where poverty has been reduced in all 10 indicators of the multidimensional poverty measurement that you have developed. But questions remain, such as who are the new poor? What are the environmental dimension of poverty, and what would be the best policies to address the new poverty created by COVID-19? Hopefully, these are questions that will be able to be answered through the collaboration between UK and Indonesian scholars. Next, I would like to invite Putu Geniki Lavinia Natih. She graduated from the Faculty of Economics, Universitas Indonesia in 2011. As a former Jardang Oxford scholar, Putu completed her Master of Philosophy and Doctor of Philosophy at the University of Oxford. In 2018, she received a Scholars Award from Oxford University's Trinity College to celebrate her distinction performance within her doctoral work. Putu is now working as a researcher at the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. She also currently teaches statistics and quantitative research methods for undergraduates at Oxford University. Her research focuses on development economics and policy, particularly issues related to multidimensional poverty and welfare. Mbak Niki, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mas Gamal, Dr. Gamal. I'm just going to share my screen. So thank you, everyone. Good afternoon to those joining us from Indonesia, and to Professor Alkire, who's in Bhutan. Good morning to those joining us from the UK. I would first like to offer my sincerest gratitude to Professor Bambang Brodjonegoro for initiating and pioneering this collaborative discussion. Professor Bambang's role in supporting Indonesia's development is commendable and truly inspiring, offering hope to us all. I would like to thank Professor Kuncoro for opening and welcoming us all to this event. Thank you also to Professor Alkire, who has offered us an in-depth, rich, and powerful introduction to the importance of multidimensional poverty. I feel really lucky to have been a student of all these three inspiring scholars and teachers. I'm not going to take up much of your time today. My aim and role here is more to listen to colleagues and friends from Indonesia, to talk a little of some ideas I've been working on here at Oxford University, and to listen to Indonesian experts on how we can work together to develop a green and sustainable roadmap to recovery from COVID-19. Professor Alkire has given us a rich introduction to the idea of multidimensional poverty and has touched upon the method she developed together with Professor James Foster, the Alkire-Foster method. This method allows us to take into account the fact that human lives are diminished in many different ways. One of the most powerful aspects of the Alkire Foster method is, however, that it offers us a way of determining the intensity of the joint and overlapping deprivations that communities and people feel and suffer. It offers us a way of zooming into these many types of deprivations to discover how intense poverty is and which deprivations contribute the most to the feelings of poverty. It allows us to discover who and where people and poverty is most felt. In addition, it also offers a way of zooming out, offering a concise and effective summary measure of these joint feelings of deprivation. Indonesia is vast, consisting of many provinces and areas. A tool and approach which may summarize different aspects of poverty can act as a crucial instrument to support and complement the efforts of the government. Another powerful aspect of this approach is that it allows for democratic action, both within its construction and within the policy action it aims to support. Indonesia has truly been a pioneering actor with regards to community-driven grassroots development programs, initiating one of the first and most famous grassroots programs, the Kecamatan development programs in the late 1990s as a response to the 98 monetary crisis. This spirit of democracy within the formulation of development policies continues today. Prof. Bambang Brodjonegoro mentioned the Desa development programs or the Dana Desa programs and the UMKM programs and various community-driven and grassroots movements that the national and regional governments have supported. Oops, something's wrong with my computer, sorry. In the midst of the pandemic, conducting surveys, discovering what communities need, how they have been impacted by the pandemic, and crucially, how policies may ease these burdens and sufferings are challenging. Digital technology, online-based tools, mobile-based applications and monitoring systems, alongside digital ways of delivering social assistance, may provide an alternative to traditional survey methods. During my time as a student at Oxford University, I had the privilege of working together with local governments in Indonesia to start piloting these digital technology-based solutions. My work coupled the use of the Alkire Foster method with digital tools and online-based methods, first to discover and highlight the voices of communities within Indonesia's local areas, all of which have different challenges to face and different terrains to navigate. And then it allowed us to build a grassroots tool to measure poverty based on a synchronization of these localized views. And then finally, using this tool as a way of targeting those most vulnerable and to pinpoint concrete action and develop robust evidence-based policies. I will not focus today on the technical aspects of this tool. However, we'll focus more on how it was developed. Poverty truly is a multidimensional phenomenon. Thus, in order to discover solutions towards promoting freedom from poverty, nations need a multi-aspect, multi-sectoral, and also multidisciplinary approach. Other than including the voices of those within Indonesia's regions, the innovative tool which I worked on also came about through discussions with colleagues within the physics department at Oxford, those involved in research in neuroscience and medical research. This merging of expertise allowed methods mostly used within physics, deep learning and machine learning approaches to data analysis to be applied within the development of a multidimensional targeting and monitoring tool to support local governments. Coming back to the theme of today's discussion, it's crucial for us to work together as scientists to find intersections between our different fields of expertise, to discover sustainable solutions which care about the environment in which we live in today and in which we hope joy. I end my presentation here with quotes from scholars who have motivated me throughout my academic life. The first from Professor Sen, who says that if we truly understand that the fulfillment of human existence lies in the freedoms we are able to enjoy, the idea of sustainable development has to be reformulated. The sustaining of ecosystems can only be achieved when we realize that we are the active agents. It's up to us to discover ways to work together for a sustainable Indonesia. Professor Sayogyo from Institut Pertanian Bogor, the founder of Indonesia's first consumption-based food poverty line in the 1980s, supported Professor Sen's idea, in that development should be recognized as encompassing many things: education, health, and importantly, the sustainability of the environment in which we live and thrive. And last but not least, Ibu Kartini, who has always been a beacon of hope for me throughout my studies at Oxford, particularly being a student away from home. Let us carry this torch together through this collaboration project, together to bring beacons of light to help safely guide Indonesia towards a sustainable recovery from COVID-19. Habis gelap, terbitlah terang. After this period of darkness, we hope we can bring light to our nation together. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And I now return the screen and the microphone to our moderator, Dr. Gamal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Natih. I would like to introduce our next speaker. Teguh Dartanto is the Vice Dean of Academic Affairs at the Faculty of Economics and Business, as well as the Head of Research Cluster on Poverty, Social Protection, and Development Economics at the Department of Economics, Universitas Indonesia. Dr. Dartanto is also a think tank project director of Tobacconomics at Institute for Health Research and Policy, University of Illinois at Chicago. His areas of specialization include poverty, social protection, development economics, health economics, and microeconometrics. He has published in, among all, The Lancet, Bulletin of Indonesian Economic Studies, Economic Modeling, Tobacco Control, World Development Perspectives, Applied Health Economics and Health Policy, Energy Policy, Singapore Economic Review, and Economics Bulletin. He has been a consultant to JICA, ADB, UNDP, and OECD. Dr. Dartanto is a member of the Indonesian Young Academy of Sciences and a 2017 Eisenhower Fellow. He received his PhD in International Development from Nagoya University. Pak Teguh, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Gamal. Good afternoon for our colleagues in Indonesia, and good morning from our colleagues in UK. And thank you very much for the time to share our views on issues on the multidimensional poverty. And thanks for Pak Bambang, Prof. Arief, and also Prof. Sabina already give us about the brief issues on the multidimensional poverty, and also raise some question for Indonesians to answer in issues in multidimensional poverty. What I would like to share today is issues on the multidimensional poverty in Indonesia, and the main message of the presentation is the urgent need of the rapid assessment of the impact of the COVID-19 using the comprehensive measurement on human deprivation. And yeah, we know that the COVID-19 has disrupted all human activities. The containment of the COVID-19 has reduced the people mobility. The figure shows that the mobility significantly dropped during the pandemic, and the reducing the mobility means a lower economic activities. Indonesia experienced the worst economic growth after the Asian financial crisis. The economic growth is only 2.07% in 2020. And then this pandemic impacted to 29.12 million people, 2.55 million unemployed, and 24 million people reduced the working hours. And the report from the BPJS Kesehatan or National Health Insurance also reported that the pandemics of COVID is dropping out on the membership. It's around 5.4 million people are dropped out from the system, losing their protection, health protection due to the unemployment as well as inability to pay the premium for the informal sector. And the poverty as the single measurement increased 2.76 million or 0.97 percentage point during years due to the pandemic. But the main question is the single dimension of poverty, for example, using the monetary measurement, cannot fully capture a human deprivation itself. As for example, those who are losing the health insurance using the job. So this is the question, because as long as the people the expenditure still can have the expenditure above the poverty line, even though they are unemployed or they are losing the national health insurance, they still cannot categorize as a poor. But I think this is the main question is we have to capture the real deprivation of the human. There is you need to provide a rapid assessment, ex ante prediction of the human deprivation with the existing data set to inform the policymakers. This is the main, I think, the main question, the main purpose of my presentation. So before the COVID, the LPM FEBUI already developed the National Multidimensional Poverty Index that including the 4 dimensions: health, education, standard of living, and the employment. This is maybe how to say, this is a adjustment from the global multidimensional poverty index. That in the health we included 3 indicators: dependent of vaccine and also the health insurance ownership. So I think in the post-COVID, we have to, the vaccination, we have to include the COVID vaccination as one of the indicator. And the education, we include the school attendance, years of schooling, and adult literacy. The standard of living, there are many indicators that we use it. But in the employment, why include the employment as part of the dimension of the multidimensional poverty index in Indonesia? Because the employment or being employed is one of the human dignity. So I think that we include this in the indicators: unemployment, informal job, and the working hours. So, so how to accommodate how to assess the impact of COVID in the MPI? So I conducted the rapid assignment approach. So at the beginning, we decide the indicator, the dimension and indicator, and calculate the pre-COVID using the SUSNAS 2019. And then we conducted the random assignment. So we have the information for those who are losing the job in 2020 and those who are losing the national health insurance using the random assignments. So we assume that people, household, having the equal probability to be impacted by the COVID. So we're trying to combine make the random assignment in the SUSNAS 2019 to assign which the household experiencing in losing the job or losing the national health insurance. So, and then we conducting the macro simulation to calculate the COVID impact of the MPI. So I think this is the very simple thing. This is the rapid assessment, because sometimes we need, or the situation force us to make the evaluations very quick with the existing data. So we make the ex ante prediction using the random assignment. So what is the result? The best of the micro simulation, that our calculation shown that even though this is the very simple thing, the only 2 indicators, the 3 indicators, the being unemployed and also losing working hour, and also the losing the insurance ownership, the multidimensional poverty in headcount increased by 0.51 percentage point or equal to 1.4 million. And the intensity of the poverty is also increased, and then the end, the COVID-19 has increased the multidimensional poverty index by 0.25 percentage point. So the methodology how to calculate the MPI headcount, intensity of the poverty, Professor Sabina already mentioned it previously. So this is the very simple methodology to use the random assignments, but we need, as the academia, we need to improve our rapid assessment. So this is just introducing like the simple statistical matching for improving rapid assessment on the impact of the COVID-19 on the MPI. So the random assignment is simplest approach to conduct ex-ante evaluation of the impact of the COVID. However, in order to improve the impact evaluation, we can implement the statistical matching. We can implement the statistical matching approach by combining the different data sets. So the problem is many the government official agency collect many data information without the interface between each others. So we call that without interoperability due to the interface. So this is becoming the challenge, how to utilize the existing data without the interface that we can connect. So the statistical matching can integrate two or more data sources related to the same target population in order to derive a unique synthetic data set. We can combine Susenas, Sakernas, BPJS Kesehatan data set, and then we have a synthetic data set. So this data set is basis for the simulating the impact of the COVID-19 on MPI. So why this is the statistical matching is the potential approach for the rapid assessment, because the statistical matching and model the probability in the matching data will provide more accurate rapid assessment than the random assessment, random assignment. So I think this is just a challenge for us how to make the rapid assessment, how to evaluate the condition using the existing data. Sometimes the collecting data is very costly, it's very time consuming, but the policy needs the very urgent needs. So this is the last my presentation, the key message of this my presentation. The first is the rapid assessment is necessary for providing the ex-ante predicted impact of the COVID-19 so that we can prepare for the mitigation and the policy intervention quickly. So this is, we need something like the very fast for making mitigation and the policy intervention. The second thing, as our simulation shows that even though the number of human deprivation will be higher than the poverty measured by the single dimension. As we already mentioned, only using the 3 indicators out of the many indicators that we use in the developing the national multidimensional poverty index in Indonesia, the number is huge increase. So I think this is very important to use more the comprehensive measure for a human deprivation using the multidimensional poverty for the monitoring progress of the development or the progress of the recovery. The lastly, this is the main message, the complex problem of the COVID-19 needs a comprehensive and the effective solution. So I think as the complex problem, we need the multidisciplinary collaboration instead of the people, discipline, and also countries. So this is my end of the presentation. We hope that our discussion today will have contribute to the solution from our problem in Indonesia for supporting the economics recovery. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Teguh. Allow me to introduce our next speaker. Arief Anshori Yusuf is Professor of Economics at the Department of Economics, Pajajaran University, Indonesia. He is also a visiting professor at the Department of International Development at King's College London. an honorary senior lecturer at Crawford School of Public Policy at the Australian National University, as well as the non-resident senior research fellow at United Nations University, World Institute for Development Economics Research, or UNU wider. Professor Yusuf is also president of Indonesian Regional Science Association. He received his bachelor in economics from Pajajaran University, Master of Science from University College London, and PhD from the Australian National University. Professor Arief, time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Ahmad. Can everyone hear me well?
Loud and clear, Pak.
All right.
Arief.
Okay, thank you. Let me share, because this is a research collaboration meeting, so let me share our research that we conducted with several colleagues of mine at the SDG centers of Pajajaran University and area about something beyond Indonesia. I hope that this can enrich our discussion today. So what we're going to talk about is the impact of global COVID-19 crisis on SDG achievement in ASEAN 5 countries. And the background is before the SDG was announced, actually there is a ASEAN Community Vision 2025. So in November 2015, actually ASEAN decide on declaration of complementarity between UN SDG and ASEAN Community Vision, of which it concludes that the common value, there are certain common values and principles in regard to these two. For example, people-centered, inclusive, sustainable, resilient, dynamic, innovative, built around peace, but most particularly important is partnership-based. And also there's at least 6 or 5 priorities, namely poverty eradication, infrastructure, connectivity, sustainable management of natural resource, sustainable production consumption, and resilience. So the questions to be asked in regard to this is, as COVID-19 crisis affect naturally this development progress of ASEAN countries, and of course its development that include SDGs indicators. So the question is how relevant actually, because of this COVID, this commitment, and is it relevant to what lies ahead after COVID? So especially in terms of the building framework for collaborations among ASEAN countries. So what we're doing is to answer this particular research objective, which is to find to what extent COVID-19 will interrupt the progress of SDG achievement in ASEAN 5 countries. So we are doing a comparative perspective. So when we look at the impact of the economic impact of COVID-19 crisis on these 5 Asian countries, first of all, maybe we need to understand that the initial condition is not similar. So you have Malaysia, among the most prosperous nations in the region, followed by Thailand, and then the list is Vietnam. So the initial value is a bit different. And yet, the impact of COVID-19 crisis on the economic of these 5 nations different. You have Vietnam, for example, which is less impacted, but you have the Philippines, which is the worst impacted, and the rest of the country falls in between. But one thing are common is that most of the projections, I'm using World Bank latest projection, is that there are no single country that return to its original growth path. So it means that the impact of COVID-19 will be permanent. So the question is, then how will this affect the SDG progress to be achieved in the future? So that's the main question. So how are we going to do this? So it's not that rocket science, actually. What we're doing is just, basically we want to link the projection of GN income per capita of these 5 countries to link, and then look at, and then try to link this GNP per capita with SDG indicators, using these equations. So So the key here is the elasticity. So we have elasticity of income per capita, elasticity of indicator of SDG with respect to income per capita growth. And this elasticity, I will explain later, will be dependent on various factors, but it will be country specific. It will be initial income level specific. So when we manage to do that, then we may calculate the gap in 2030 of what between what will be achieved due to COVID and what would have been achieved had there's no COVID, and that's we call gap. But we also can calculate the lag, how many years then the COVID-19 create the delay in the achievement of this SDG. So the first is how going to calculate the ETA, the elasticity. So to do that, we're doing a cross-country regression analysis, to estimate the elasticity of this indicator with respect to GN per capita. But there are some challenges. One of the challenge is the non-linearity of the relationship, because many of the SDG indicator, for example, will be zero when you are at certain threshold of income. And also the relationship between indicators of SDG and income will be very far from fixed for the indicators. So we have to be selective in picking which indicators. So what we do is something that we aim to be a transparent and replicable approach, a selection of indicator to be used to calculate the ETA. So we start with a UN stat database that contains 1,772 indicator dimension. Indicator like poverty, dimension like rural, urban, male and female and things like that. So we have a unique 1,772 dimensions of indicator from dimension indicator from UN stat, and then we select those that are available for ASEAN countries, and also the most up to date. So we come up with a lesser number, and then we come up with 683, for example, indicator. Then we do the linear regression first, and then we check, for example, is the R square is more than 0.25? Is this coefficient theoretically consistent? Is the p-value small enough, for example? And then if yes, then we select that indicator, and if not, then we try to take into account the non-linearity factor by excluding the high income country, for example. And if it's passed the test, then we return to the one that is included. And then for estimating the ETA for those selected indicators dimension, then we do 3 regression, which we do linear regression, we do Tobit regression, we do fractional regressions, and then we pick which one has the good or the best fit model to estimate that. So the result will be 269 indicators that will, well, the elasticity will vary according to the income of that countries. So it's income of that countries. So it's country specific. So I give, so this is one example. Oh, sorry. Okay, maybe. So this is the result. Just give you some result, highlight of the result. So we found that COVID-19 pandemic interrupted, not all, but majority of SDGs indicator in these 5 ASEAN countries. So, for example, more than 90% of the SDG indicator that we selected was impacted by the COVID-19. The reason why some are not, because maybe before 2030 is already been achieved. So, and then the shock to the economy doesn't affect the achievement. So the 2030 will be the same. But so that's one of the story. And then another one is we also estimate that the average gap in 2030 of those dimensions in the indicator dimension is around 3%. Yeah? And on average, it's not really it doesn't really sound serious. 3%. Yet, if you look again, it varies according to countries and the indicator, certain indicator. For example, you have Philippines 5% average and gap, and then the least is the Vietnam for 1% average. Indonesia is somewhere in the middle. And then the lag, for example, also not that much. Our calculation suggests it only 1.16 years lag, 1.16 years lag. Again, but it varied. Yeah? Philippines, again, is the worst affected in terms of lag, and then Vietnam is the least, and Indonesia is somewhere in between. So here's another highlight. The lessons learned from this exercise is that if you look these 5 countries, there are some differences in terms of the, if you want to know what behind those differences. Okay, I think first is some country has good initial condition in terms of the indicators, because they already have good progress, like Malaysia, Thailand, they already have good progress in terms of the initial conditions. But the COVID impact differently. For example, Thailand is different than Vietnam. Thailand is not that impacted by the COVID-19 in terms of the health issues, but their economy is vulnerable because they are dependent on tourism sector, for example. Vietnam, they have a lowest economic impact because they have good pandemic responses. So that's different. Yeah? So that's the different, and that matters. Yeah? Philippines is unfortunate because it has low initial condition in terms of the COVID-19, yet the economic impact is worsened by the high stringency the government put in the pandemic response. Yeah? So Indonesia, on the other hand, I think, again, somewhere in the middle. So it has moderate initial condition in terms of the SDGs indicator before the COVID, yeah, and it has moderate economic impact because we approach less stringent pandemic response. So we are not worse, or we are not comparable to Philippines in terms of the impact. So let me conclude with several points. First is our exercise suggests that COVID-19 crisis actually interrupted almost all SDG indicators of ASEAN country that we picked through the method that we actually not invented, but we come up, yeah, that trying to be that transparent and replicable method. And then the second point is on average SDG indicator in 2030 of this ASEAN 5 country will be around 3% lower, yeah, in 2023, or in terms of years lag or delay, it is average 1.2 years lag. However, it doesn't sound serious. However, if you have to be careful because it varies quite widely across country and indicator. Philippines, for example, is the worst affected. Vietnam is the least affected. Several factors count. Yeah. One is initial condition, both the initial condition of the SDGs indicator of the country, as well as the vulnerability of that economy, yeah, to COVID-19. And then if that's also impact of COVID-19 on growth. But also what matters is the projected recoveries, because the projected recoveries also functions of many factors that experts know, yeah, about what's going on that particular country. So finally, let me end with the hope that this kind of forward-looking analysis, I think should guide ASEAN partnership to achieve SDG and ASEAN community vision. So let me end this presentation and return to moderator Pak Ahmad. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yusuf. Very interesting research findings from you. Allow me to introduce the next speaker. Dr. Masita Dwi Mandini Manessa received her Bachelor of Science in Geography from Universitas Gadjah Mada in 2008, and her Master of Engineering in Environmental Science and Engineering, and Doctor of Engineering in System Design Engineering from Yamaguchi University, Japan in 2011 and 2017, respectively. She has been with the GIS and RS Laboratory, Geography Department, Universitas Indonesia since 2018. Her primary research has focused on coastal habitat mapping and satellite-derived bathymetry. Her current interests include spatial dynamic models, satellite-derived ocean measurements, and deep learning for remote sensing imagery. And hopefully today, her presentation is titled Toward Remote Sensing Approach as a Monitoring Tools During Recovery Process of COVID-19. Hopefully, we will be able to learn from her about how we integrate remote sensing and other novel approach to learn about poverty as well as well-being. Dr. Masita, time is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Gamal. Good afternoon, my dear college in Indonesia, and good morning for college in the UK. I think my turn is going to be very different from the previous panelists. My biggest aim in here, actually, I want to introduce the geography department to able to further collaborate with the other members here, participating here, discussing on how we can analyze the poverties, the environments in more three-dimensional ways using the remote sensing data. So actually, this work is numbers of researchers in geography departments, but very kindly asked me to represent them today. So my presentation is about toward remote sensing approach as a monitoring tools during the recovery process of COVID-19. So because this is my first time as a geographer to introduce the geographic department of University of Indonesia, I would like to share a bit about the geography department. Actually, the geography department have a numbers of research that can be support these topics from the physical geography, the human geography, and also the GIS and remote sensing that I will present today. And this is the cluster research in our department, like landscape dynamic, the economic and social transformations, politicals, ecology, and geospatial technology for lives. I'll make a quick presentation, so I just want to get a brief introduce like what we can do further from this kind of topics, from this kind of science that we developed in geography department. This is a kind of utilizations of remote sensing and GIS in our department from the land use, land convergence, health, environments, agricultures, tourism, urban planning, and also disasters. And also we also very proudly, because we also developed the interactive dashboard related to the COVID-19 spatial distributions, call it ASI-COVID dashboard that I will explain further in the next slides. So I think not everyone is understanding what is remote sensing. So remote sensing actually is a satellite-based Earth observation systems. I think the person in college in economics is wondering what kind of product is remote sensing actually. So this is remote sensing. This is observation from the satellite. I choose several interesting areas in Indonesia, such as Jakarta, Morewali, and University of Indonesia, and we can observe the dynamic change of our Earth phenomena, especially the land cover toward multiple years. This is toward 30 years changing. We can see the massive developments of Jakarta base and increasing forest change in the Morewali that been open for the industrial areas, very successful industrial area, I guess. And the last one is how the University of Indonesia changing the economics across the environments, because we can see in here that in the previous year that the areas around the University of Indonesia mostly is green, which means it's a vegetation area and fastly change to the build-up area. So University of Indonesia have very successful. I'm sorry, why is clean up? Sorry. Oh, let me scratch. Yeah. Sorry, because my screen is. Oh.
Yeah, no, somebody else.
Somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, it's stop screen. I do the share screen again. Okay. So I continues. Just the brief introduction on how remote sensing works. So the remote sensing works that way. We observe the actual Earth observations. So in here, so I like to do more showing what actual COVID-19 environments monitoring that we can do from the remote sensing data. So I make a quick website, web apps, such kind of web apps showing. I share you the links that I developed the webs. This is the air quality monitoring based on remote sensing data. So this is the remote sensing, and we can see how the COVID affecting the quality of air in Indonesia. In here, that the significant drops of air pollutant is appearing around July for the entire Indonesia. And if you want to see the distribution, just click the point and you can see. So this is just interesting things that I want to introduce the remote sensing to the community here. So if you want to see, I just choose several areas in Indonesia, and if you want to see how COVID-19 affecting the air quality in Yogyakarta, we can choose the Yogyakarta, and we can see in general the distribution when the air quality reduce or increasing. So this was one of applications related to the remote sensing. And another interesting part that might be very related to the economic aspect is the nightlight. So this is the remote sensing satellite to observe the nightlight over the Indonesia. So we can see this is the average values for entire Indonesia. And if we want to see, I think Bali is the most interesting part to observe. We can see how this COVID affecting the economic night in Bali. You can see significant drops start to appear in the May, where the areas in Kuta is not all the lights been turned on, perhaps because a lot of business been turned off, especially during the Kuta, during the COVID, I mean. So that's what I want to share related to what remote sensing doing for the environment. Actually, there was numbers of things that we can do, and we can correlate it with the economic aspect, with the people movements, and also with the poverty itself. So I think the next slide. This is another idea that I think is very interesting about the poverty. Make it as a three-dimensional information based on the remote sensing data of high resolutions, when we can map the actual urban or rural pocket poverties based on the remote sensing data. This is a kind of implementations of remote sensing. And I also want to show our department previous work related to the COVID-19. The first one that I would like to share is about the people in pixels. This is a remote sensing based geodemographic estimations, which is, I think, very related with the economics and poverties to see the distribution. I think previously already been mentioned the mapping of poverties. So this is our first early research about building the geodemographic. So demographic data in spatial way. We also develop the voluntary geographic informations as we share the online survey to people inputted their household situations, how many people live in their house, and numbers of information. So this is one of models that we developed in the geography departments. And this is we firstly initiate in the Jakarta province. As you can see that the area, not residential area, is masked out. So we can get the actual pixel by pixel, point by point number of people in the Jakarta area. So this is the accuracy of the proposed models, not very high because I think it require more numbers of validation data to build up the models. Another models that we develop is I developed a spatial time series forecasting to mapping the risk of COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm using the previous research works about the geodemographic data, the people and in pixels. This is the Bandung greater areas, and also the network data to see the movement of peoples. And this is picobar. The picobar is the data from East Java province about the distribution of COVID. So the bigger the area is mean that more people is get affected in that area. So based on these three, I input it in some kind of models. I think it's not very interesting. I do some kind of dynamics modeling to see the movement and predict the future spread of COVID-19. So this is my model. So this is the spread. So this is following the day here. I'm using 170 daily interval data. So I built the model based on the 170 daily data, and we try to predict the actual spread spatially. And also this is the graphic. And as you can see, I try to analyze by showing the relations with the regulations being implied to the regions, like the total lockdown, the Bogor, Bekasi, Depok lockdown, and partial lockdown, and the current situation. So the model is not being updated. Last time I modeled the data in August, I guess, and this is how I predict that in November there will be a high COVID distributions in the Bandung greater area. The most interesting part about the spatial science is that we can see the distributions, the actual distribution. So the regulations being proposed can be more effective rather than showing the data in just a tabular information or not in spatial ways, I mean. So this is the models, and we can see which areas in Bandung Raya have a very high risk of COVID-19. So the last one is the products that been developed by the geography departments under the Consortium Research and Innovasi COVID. This is called as a C-COVID. So I will share you the links. So I think it's more interesting to see the actual so this is the C-COVID. Everyone can share and it's update daily to show the distributions of COVID, the risk, the actual risk. Here, this is the confirmation positive COVID, and we analyze the risk also based on the newest data. And there was also the information about the areas and the distance to the hospitals. So this is a kind of collaborations between the spatial data, two-dimensional data, and also the three-dimensional data. So in the website also we shows the estimated number of people in the height risk zone and in which area it is. So I think that's all my presentations, Dr. Gamal. I hope I share a kind of interesting part about how we each utilize the spatial science to monitor our environment or to monitor the current situation of COVID in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manita. Our next speaker is from Universitas Gadjah Mada. Dr. Rimawan Pradiptyo is the head of Department of Economics, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. He is the initiator of the humanitarian movement called Sonjo, Sambatan Jogja, during the pandemic of COVID-19. Dr. Rimawan was a resource person for several government programs. Chief among them is the National Movement of Natural Resource Protection, Corruption Eradication Committee, or KPK, and Anti-Illegal Fishing Task Force. the Ministry of Marine and Fisheries, Indonesia. His areas of specialization are economics of crime, game theory, and experimental economics. He earned his PhD in economics from the University of York, UK. Dr. Rimawan, time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gamal. I would like to share some presentation. This is related to the initiatives that we have in Jogja. It's called, as you mentioned before, it's called Sonjo. Sonjo is abbreviation from Sambatan Jogja. So Sambat, kind of a communal work, basically. So I just want to start to show this. There are some types of, what is that? The social capital, the type of social capital is totally different when we work during the natural disaster or whether you work on during the COVID. The problem with the COVID is that we don't know as yet, how long will it take for the COVID to last. And recent research shows that that will be an endemic. So that's create a problem. And in many respects, there are so many things that we have to adjust because our daily routine has changed. So this is the problem. So it's not only dealing with the social capital per se that we need to do, but then the social capital may promote some innovation to some extent. So this is the way we perceive. So basically, we don't perceive the COVID-19 as a disaster, but we rather use a war in this. Now, we just use what is the dominant strategy to some extent. It's just expect the unexpected in terms of the impact, but we need to think about there's some innovative way in terms of the solution. But the most importantly is how to do the resource mobilization, because that is very important. Just want to now how to mobilize resources. Now it's many social movement like this, and usually they expect to have some aids from the government or some help from the government. Not for us, not with us. The way we think is that, okay, the government has a limited budget anyhow, and we are the developing country. So if you expect the government to do as much as they can, like as if in developed countries, then that will be problematic, because we don't have that capability. So how we do it is trying to mobilize the resources from non-government, basically, which is here we have some sort of like 5 to 6 resources, or the GDP actually belongs to the household and the businesses. Now, and also the fact that in Indonesia we have about 50% of the economy, the contribution of the economy is from the SMEs and the informal sector. So we use this method, which is, we call it sambatan. The sambatan is traditional form of communal work, basically in Java. And this one is actually extinct because I think it's in the end of the 1980s in Java. We don't use sambatan any longer. And in sambatan, there is no money involved. And this is the way that we're trying to replicate, basically. That's why we use Sonjo. This is the humanitarian movement to minimize. So basically, we focus on vulnerable people and people at risk going to the COVID pandemic. And this is only limited in Yogyakarta. Now, why is it that's limited in Yogyakarta? It's simple, because we only use the WhatsApp group. So you can imagine at the moment we have, I manage 15 WhatsApp group. If you want me to extend it to Central Java, my mobile phone will not work because there are too many WhatsApp that we have to deal with. Now, and what is the main capital that we have? The main. So basically, our capital is just trust. And how to build the trust is come from the integrity and transparency. And how this can be achieved, because originally, basically, that we are from the academia in UGM who support of the anti-corruption. So that is the original, the origin of the Sonjo itself. And we're focusing on outcome. We don't focus on the budget absorption like the government, no, because there's nothing to absorb anyhow. Up until now, there is no funding that we. Next Wednesday, we will 1 year. completely 1 year. We will commemorate the birthday of the Sonjo, for 1 year. Now, this is the WhatsApp group that we have. It's ranging from various things, and basically only focus in 3 things, which is economic, and education. And on top of that, we also have some policy making as well, policy. And this is the organization. It starts from the parsimony. It starts from something simple, but then we try to follow process and become more complex, and we're trying to upscale the program. Of course, you need to follow it closely. And so we start with on the 24th of March, we should only start with the one WhatsApp group, but then all of a sudden it's increased. And the use of the technology later on, we use a website, database, apps, and also the social media. And we also have, I understand that we are an informal sector movement, but we also have a compliance committee. So the compliance committee will ensure that all of the intervention of the program within Sonjo should comply to the government regulation, including when we are not allowed to manage the budget, because this is part of the OJK regulation, of the financial authority regulation. Okay, so this is the type of the information that we have. So they start from the WhatsApp group, and then we develop the database, website, apps, and social media, and etc. Now, this is the 15 programs that we have, and I will not explain it individually, but I will skip some of them. And that's in three sector, which is the health, economy, and also the education. Now we start with this anchoring, and this is the weekly webinar, basically every Sunday evening, and it starts from asking question about what do we face, is there any problem that we have, and then now it's become the reference for some mainstream media. So some mainstream media quote from the Angkringan, and every week we do have this. And this week will be the 49th series of the Sonjo Angkringan, and we also work together with Radio Trijaya, and they rebroadcast the program. And then we also have the database. This is the earliest version of the system that we have, and so we accommodate. We're trying to create the demand and supply of the food and some culinary product. And it's you can see up until 28th of May, we have 726 SME, 37 supermarket, and 216 traditional market or culinary park. During Ramadan, we have the Sonjo Ngabuburit, and then this boosts the sales of the SMEs which join into the Sonjo. At first, we use it only within our 6 WhatsApp group, but then we extend it into the UTAS in a Twitter, and then we send it through our social media, and then it increases the revenue of the SMEs in the Sonjo. And then we create what I call the etalase pasar Sonjo. This is the showroom, and everything in Sonjo it's free. It's free, because what we're trying to do is trying to reduce the transaction cost that has been faced by the SMEs. Because when we're trying to shift from physical transaction towards the digital transaction or the online transaction, they underwent massive transaction costs, and many of the SMEs owner actually they use a sophisticated mobile phone, but at first what they use usually just only for the WhatsApp, and we're trying to introduce them how to use the GPS and creating the Canva and the poster through Canva and that kind of thing. It's steep learning curve basically in these circumstances. So up to now, we have 352 traders in our system, in the EPS. It's still growing. And this is the roadmap of the digital transformation, basically. So what we're trying to do is not creating the marketplace. Because if we were trying to create the marketplace, then you have to divide the fees. And we cannot do that. So we only put in the level one step below the marketplace, which is the EPS. So this is trying to transform the SME to be familiar with with the digital transaction. That is the aim, basically. And we also have this called Sonjo Mikunani, which is the exchange of knowledge. This Hanung RIP, he passed away, but he gave us a tremendous contribution by sharing what I call the frozen vacuum packing. And now, what is the impact? Some of the impact is this. Tengkleng, sate klata, and everything, they sell it from Jogja to every big cities in Jakarta, in Indonesia, and everything is using the vacuum packing. So in this case, in this scenario, it's easier for them, because they produce in Indonesia, but they can sell it anywhere in Indonesia. They produce in Jogja, but they can sell it through anywhere in Indonesia. And the cost to send it to Jakarta, for instance, if it is less than 2 kilograms, it's probably about 20,000 rupiahs, which is very cheap, very economical. And we also have the virtual fashion show, and also wedding fashion show, that kind of virtual wedding and that kind of stuff. And this one has been promoted by some members in Sonjo. And we also have a poster as well. Let's just skip this. And this one is for the giving a charity, especially for the PPE. And the first month of the first 3 months of during the COVID, 90% of the PPE in Yogyakarta is actually from the donation from the people. And we also have what I call the Sonjo innovation. So this is one of the innovation. And what we try to do is creating WhatsApp group, and then invite some innovators to, from the University of Gajah Mada and other university in Jogja to discuss. And some of the project is like Genos, and also the faculty of pharmacy producing the VTM and etc. And they can reduce substantially, because the VTM costs 150,000 per unit, but the production from the faculty of pharmacy of UGM is just only 20,000. So it's a substantial saving in these circumstances. This is for for our colleague from wedding organizer. We created this one as well. And what we're trying to do is trying to persuade them to embrace the health protocol during the wedding. And this one it creates massive change, because in the old days you may have like 1,000 or 2,000 guests. That's something common. Now it's only 50, and the rest they can use the virtual, dealing virtually with using Zoom or Webpack and etc. It changed drastically, and then we discussed this in some of the WhatsApp group. We have observer as well. To those who come from other cities as Jogja, we allow them to stay for 7 days. And then now this is the Rewangan. So what is the Rewangan? This one is related to the system that we created for the referral of the COVID patient among who has this idea is not us, actually. This is from ED, so from the association of the GP, and they asked us, okay, is there any possibility that we create this kind of system? And they say, okay, let's do. And up to now, there's a 112 patient that we managed to go into our system to help the backlog of the referral system. Then we have this one as well for the convalescent. Although this is related to the Department of Medicine in UGM, and they conduct research regarding the convalescent, and then we work together, and we trying to gather the potential, and then they will do the rest of the job basically. And this one is everything is free. This one is related to this program is aimed to promote the resilient village during the pandemic COVID. And in order to do that, we have to support what I call creating the shelter. Why is it the shelter is so important? Because there are many patients actually their house is not appropriate to do the self-isolation. So they have to go to the village isolation, or also the Tukuh, which is smaller than the village. And we are the one who support in terms of providing the help, for that we trying to trying to obtain. And many people now give us the like Professor Ratiutari, he conducted the music concert, and she opened the donation, and the donation will be used to support the shelter. Now, this is one is for importance. This is what that. This is a tackling the. This is the program for developing tutorials on how to taking care of the COVID-19 patient who pass away at home, not in the hospital. If it is in hospital, it's the business is done. That's okay. But if it is happening that you and the patient died at home, taking care of that, and how they do that, because this is created the dispute. In order to minimize the dispute, then we did the video for the tutorials. And lastly, we have what I call Sonjo Uwo. Sonjo Uwo is a waste. So basically, we have many shelter in Bantul, and obviously the ongoing program that we work with the village of Panggung Harjo. So lastly, basically, we have a form of social capital, but it's promote the innovation as well to some extent in tackling a problem emerged in because of the COVID-19. It is simple but effective communication using WhatsApp, and in many occasions that we deal with some backlog. The problem is backlog, like the referral of the patient. We use the double auction, and then in double auction we put it in a WhatsApp group, and then afterward we just adding the information in a spreadsheet, and then everybody can say which one they want to refer, anything like that. So this is the one from me, and if you want to learn more about Sonjo, so you just type sonjo.id, and then that's you can visit to our website. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Rimawan. That's a very exciting presentation. I personally have learned so much from your presentation as well as other panelists' presentation. Unfortunately, we are nearing the end of the webinar, and thus we do not have enough time for discussion. Hopefully, if you do have a burning question, you can direct your questions to the panelists through their publicly announced emails. However, allow me to read some of the most important lessons learned today. We learned from Professor Alkire that Indonesia has a hidden success where poverty has been reduced in all of the 10 multidimensional poverty indicators. Questions remain though. Who are the new poor? What are the environmental dimensions of new poverty, and what will be the best policies best to address new poverty created by COVID-19? We learned from Dr. Natih that the strength of the Alkire Foster method is to help us understanding not only the multidimensionality, but also the intensity of poverty. We learned from Dr. Dartanto that so many people lost their coverage of the national health insurance through BPJS, both for those working in the formal as well as the informal sector. So COVID-19 has not only shifted the allocation of resources, but also the intensity distribution of people suffering. Thus, research on poverty post-COVID requires a multitude of sophisticated novel methods, including statistical matching and micro-simulation of existing data sets. We learned from Professor Yusuf that COVID-19's impact will be long-lasting. It will affect SDGs achievement for all ASEAN countries, and we can predict that by 2030, ASEAN SDGs will have at least 1.2-year lag of its supposed achievement. We learned from Dr. Manessa that we can use remote sensing as a novel approach to monitor the recovery process after COVID-19 pandemic. Hopefully, our esteemed economists today can help providing the necessary multidimensional measures to complement monitoring tools developed by our excellent geographers here at UI. We learned from Dr. Pradiptyo that we can find very interesting best practices to capitalize the rich social network of Yogyakartans and hopefully Indonesians in general to collect donations, distribute them, and help alleviate suffering during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have learned that some people don't only donate money, but also time and other types of tangible and intangible resources to help hospitals, clinics, and COVID-19 survivors during the pandemic. Last but not least, to officially conclude our event this afternoon, I would kindly request the Director General of Research and Development Strengthening, Ministry of Research and Technology, Professor Ismunandar, to give his closing remark. Professor Ismunandar, time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Gamal. Thank you so much for everyone for joining this session this evening or this morning, probably in Oxford. I think Pak Gamal, thank you also have summarized all the important points out of this webinar, and we learned a lot from all the speakers. And one of the important things of the discussion is we do hope that both researcher from Oxford and as well as our researcher from Indonesia, not limited to a researcher from University of Indonesia, University Pajajaran, and University of Gadjah Mada, can have an idea how to collaborate with our partners in University of Oxford for the important topics. But also, if possible, out of the topics that have been discussed that probably been inspired by the topic that have been presented is also welcome. From the point of view of our ministry, of our research collaboration that been encouraged by the minister, as we've been learned from his remark in the opening of the webinars, that we do hope that out of this matchmaking process, you can both have a proposals, a joint proposal, a research proposal that will be conducted in the usually it's about 3 to 4 years research collaborations with specific and targeted output out of the research. Then we can discuss how to fund the research of the research collaborations. So we hope that this is an initiative that can be continued with intensive discussion from both parties, and we from the ministers are open to how we can facilitate the exchange of the researchers and also the collaborations. We do believe that many of the today challenge, as we can learn from the presentation that just been given, is a global challenge and then has to be solved by a collaboration. And it is true that international collaboration or global collaboration is the natures of the research itself. So with that, thank you again for all the speakers, and we do hope that this fruitful discussion this evening, we can learn a lot and can inspire the future collaboration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Ismunandar, for the closing remarks. Thank you also, Pak Gamal, for summarizing what we have been discussing today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have already attended the insightful presentations from the speakers. There are questions remains to be explored and drive the need for more rigorous and extensive research. Hopefully, after this event, it will be followed by fruitful research collaborations between Indonesia and UK to discover solutions regarding these matters. We are now at the end of this event. Thank you for the speakers, invitees, and all the distinguished participants for joining the webinar. Good afternoon for colleagues in Indonesia. Good morning for colleagues in UK. Stay safe, stay healthy. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
sehat semuanya. Makasih semuanya, Bapak Ibu
Thank
semuanya.
you, Pak Teguh.
Terima
kasih.
Sehat-sehat semua.
Terima
Terima kasih Mbak
kasih.
Niki, Pak Rimawan, Pak Arief,
Ya, setelah ini
Mbak
kita
Masita.
akan akan
mari.
intensif discussion ya untuk tim kolaborasi. Nanti kita akan koordinasi kembali untuk realisasi lah kira topik-topik apa yang akan kita eksplor untuk jadikan kolaborasi bersama. Terima kasih semuanya. Saya mewakili panitia semuanya jika ada kekurangan karena memang ini waktunya mendesak. Alhamdulillah kita bisa sampai hari ini dan menyelesaikan. Semoga ini adalah awal untuk kolaborasi yang lebih mendalam ke depan. Terima kasih semuanya. Saya ucapkan kepada Kementerian BRIN, Ristek BRIN atas supportnya. Semoga ini menjadi awal yang baik bagi kita semua. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Sama-sama.
Izin live Bapak Ibu.
Izin live Bapak Ibu.
Bapak Ibu.
Terima kasih semua.
Economics and Business, University of Indonesia, FEBUI, is a modern, dynamic, and welcoming campus, a place to study for the nation's future leaders. Situated in two strategic locations, Depok and Salemba, we are fully committed to contribute to the development of knowledge in economics and business, and to nurture future leaders with a sense of social responsibility and the ability to address global environmental changes. For over 65 years, we have produced the country's best graduates that will potentially play important roles both in the Indonesian government and the private sector.
So my name is Thijs Hesselmans, I'm from Blanda, and one of the many things I like about Fakultas Ekonomi and Business Universitas Indonesia is that the campus is really green. It's wonderful.
In the future, we are aiming to become Asia's leading economics and business learning center, which contributes to the development of Indonesia and the global community. FEBUI has three departments: the Department of Economics, the Department of Management, and the Department of Accounting, with specified courses such as